And here's a story from Sofia, and we don't have anything bad to say about North Carolina, Greensboro. I've never even been there. So without further ado, Sofia, welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you all for having me today. My name is Sofia Robinson. I was born with sickle cell anemia, and I had a bone marrow transplant in 2011 when I was 11 years old. And I'm going to be sharing with you all my story today. Just waiting for the slides to appear.
Can you see them, Sofia?
Yes, I can see them. I can see the Wolverines for Life screen.
Perfect.
Okay, so yes, I had a bone marrow transplant when I was 11 years old. In this picture on the left, you can see that's my brother on the left, AJ. That's me in the middle, and that's my other brother on the right. This was before the transplant. So my disease, when I was younger, it was all good and everything was working out smoothly. But the older I became, the more issues and side effects I started to experience with my disease. And it got very bad to the point where the doctors recommended that I would be a good candidate for a bone marrow transplant if I was able to find the match. This is something I've never heard about, me being 11 years old, thinking I can get rid of my disease. So me just thinking about, me living life without sickle cell anemia, I was like, wow, I didn't even realize that was a possibility. So after having a discussion with my parents and the parents talking to the doctors, they decided that I could be a candidate. They did test my brother, who is on the right of me in this picture, to see if he would be able to donate, and they did find out that my brother was a perfect match donor, which was a real blessing because that's not common to find a perfect match. So I was really lucky to be able to go through the transplant process. So next slide, please. So here in this picture, you can see I'm in the hospital now. This is my brother, you can see again, who was my donor in the picture. So this started the journey with me having a transplant, and I did miss half of the 6th grade. So that was super hard because I was just starting middle school. I was excited to start, but in order to have a transplant, you do have to miss a lot of school. At least that was for me. I had to miss a lot of school. So the transplant did require about 5 or 7 days of chemotherapy, and I was hospitalized for 1 month. So while I was in the hospital, I started to feel like a lot of depression because not only was I in the hospital, but I was isolated basically from anyone because the risk of infection was very high. And that was really sad because I'm a very social person, so I wasn't used to just being alone, not being able to interact with my friends, not being able to interact with most of my family. But luckily, I have a very creative mother who was able to keep me busy and able to keep me motivated to do stuff. So some of the things that I picked up, activities that I picked up while I was in the hospital, was couponing. Became really into couponing. I don't know why. I wasn't about to buy anything while I was in the hospital, but that was something that I found very entertaining. And watching Extreme Couponers, if you've ever seen that show, that motivated me too. Another thing that kept me motivated was decorating my room, thinking about decorating my room when I was able to come home. I wanted a Michigan themed room. So my mom was like, okay, if you want to do that, like every time, say if you walk around, like if you do what you're supposed to do, if you get out of the bed, if you take your medicine, you could buy one thing for your room. So that really kept me motivated to do everything that I was supposed to do. So if I took all my medicine, I could buy a pillow, or if I got out of the bed, I could buy like another decoration for my room. So that was very motivating for me, and it kept me busy, and that really helped with my depression while I was in the hospital for a month. Next slide, please. So after my transplant, at first I was super excited to go home because in my 11-year-old mind, I was thinking, okay, I'm going home. That means I can interact with people now. But of course, that was not the case. I was still basically in the hospital, except I was in the hospital in my room because I was still isolated from everybody. I still couldn't interact with anyone. So that was hard for me to realize that I wasn't going to be able to do what I thought I was going to be able to do. That also was very depressing for me. But as time went on, my mom figured out ways to get around that. Like, for example, I went to the movies super early in the morning while nobody was there. We also went to restaurants super early in the morning. And that was really, that started to motivate me and to make me more happy to think, okay, I'm starting to live a normal life again. But right when I started to think everything was back to normal, unfortunately, our house got struck by lightning, which is like, wow, you know, who thinks your house is going to get struck by lightning, especially when I was in the middle of my transplant. So that was a whole nother story, and my family had to go into live in a hotel in 6 weeks. And at first I was in this isolated room. The risk of infection was low, but now I'm living in a hotel room, and it was really bad living there for 6 weeks. And I also experienced when I went to the hotel room because of my stress, because I was going through a lot. I started to have pain again, which was weird. I'm like, why am I having pain? If I had a bone marrow transplant, I thought that was supposed to stop. But apparently, because there's a damage to my nerves, and nobody really told me that before, like, oh, you still might experience pain, even if you had a transplant, because damage has already been done. So that was also hard for me to realize that, I wasn't going to be completely pain-free from the start. Next slide, please. So this was me at the 100 day of after my transplant. And something that was really emphasized during my transplant, like just get to 100 days and everything will be better. But that was not the case for me. I was really looking forward to that 100 days. But as you can see in this picture, this was at my 100-day party that my parents threw for me. And I was not happy at all. I was still sad. I still couldn't really be around people. The days were not looking up for me. They were more looking down in my case, because I was really thinking after this 100 days, like I'll basically be living a normal life. But that was not the case. So I feel like that's something that we should talk about. And I'm not sure if that's still the case because I had my bone marrow transplant in 2011. But I do think we shouldn't emphasize 100 days for everybody, like, oh, just get to 100 days and it'll be better, because not everyone is going to have the same case. Some people might feel better before 100 days. Some people might take longer than 100 days. And honestly, I didn't start to feel like myself until my 1 year anniversary after my transplant. So that's something that I did want to talk about, is that 100 days definitely was not true, at least for me. And another thing that I want to talk about that we are told to look after if you have a bone marrow transplant is graft versus host disease, which is GVHD. And when I was 11, not a lot of African Americans were having bone marrow transplants because, not being able to find a donor. And so for the GVHD, we were told to look out for redness in the skin. But for African Americans, or at least for me, it was darkening in the skin and not red. So this whole time we were looking for redness in the skin, but it was really darkening. So we didn't realize the darkening of my skin and the peeling of my skin was GVHD, which was a whole nother set of problems. So it's important to realize that African American symptoms of bone marrow transplants might not be the same as what would be commonly found in Caucasian people. So that's something that is important to talk about, is what it's going to look different for African Americans versus other people when having a transplant. How are the side effects going to be different for us? So that was a really big letdown, to think that I've been having having GVHD this whole time, but I didn't even realize it because we weren't told to look out for darkening. Next slide, please. So anyways, this picture was in 7th grade, and I started to feel a little bit more back on track. I was going back to school. You can see this is me and my mom and my brothers in the left picture. My hair was getting better. It was starting to grow in, and I wasn't experiencing barely any pain. So I felt really happy because of that. One thing that I did have a problem with going into the 7th grade was that the teachers were not really understanding of my accommodations. They didn't understand that I'm not going to be able to do the same amount of work as, like, my peers, because I'm still experiencing side effects, and I'm tired all the time, and I have a lot of doctor's appointments. But my teachers were not really not all of them, but some of them were not understanding of my accommodations that I needed. So I feel like that's another thing we should discuss in the future, is how medical teams can help or can talk to teachers about going back to school, because it's not going to be the same, or we can't do exactly the same stuff as our peers yet, because we just had a bone marrow transplant about a year ago. Another thing that got me through my difficult time was my faith. And I feel like that's something that is very strong in most African American people, is keeping their faith. And that's something that I held on to, and I was able to get through my transplant. So that's another thing that is crucial, is that we should not discount, or medical person, or when someone's having a transplant, you shouldn't really discount their faith and the faith, discount their faith, that the families are hoping that they're holding on to that, because that's really crucial, especially in the African American people. Sorry, I can't talk. Is holding on to that. And then on the right is, you'll see, this is us in the Bahamas. This is our first time going, on a vacation, because before I couldn't really do that. I was always in pain, so there was always a risk. If we go somewhere, I might break out into a pain episode. So this was our first time going on vacation, not having to worry about my sickle cell disease, not being able to worry about we didn't have to worry about the transplant, and we're just having a good time. Next slide, please. So again, this was the 1-year anniversary of my transplant. This was during the cruise. Life was definitely starting to look up. I was super happy to be there. And then next slide, please. So on the left, this was me, and I went to go visit my aunt in New York. I went completely alone in 8th grade. Again, something I definitely wouldn't be able to do without a transplant, because, New York was cold. It is cold. Michigan is cold too, but I was going alone into the cold. I didn't need my mom to come with me. I didn't need to bring a bag of pain medicine with me on this to go visit my aunt. So that was a huge deal to me to be able to go travel alone. And then the biggest accomplishment to me being in 8th grade, was being able to join a cheerleading team, because me with sickle cell, that's something I always wanted to do. But of course, there was no way else I would be able to be a cheerleader with sickle cell, being in the hot sun all day cheering. But I convinced my mom, like, oh, I had this transplant, I'm back to normal. Let me do the stuff I want to do. So she did enroll me in cheerleading, and that was a really big deal to me, because I was finally able to do stuff that I would have never thought I could do without the transplant. So I'm very blessed and fortunate for that. Next slide, please. So again, this is just more pictures, or on the right, that's just another picture of me traveling. On the left, I believe I was about to go to church. So yeah, we were in California, living it up, just having a good time, again, living a pain-free life, which I'm very fortunate about. Next slide, please. This is me doing indoor skydiving, which is really fun. I found out, wow, there's really nothing I could not do, even doing skydiving again, indoor skydiving, and something I definitely didn't think I would be able to do when I had sickle cell disease. And next slide, please. Okay, and finally, this was high school graduation. I went to Ann Arbor Pioneer, which is across from the big house. Just to let you know if you have any Pioneer grads out here, I'm not really sure. But this is just me and my brother, who in this picture, he was about to graduate from college. But the transplant, I'm so very blessed to be able to have it. But there should be more people with sickle cell who are able to have transplants. I would have never in imagined years think I could do any of the stuff that I showed you in this PowerPoint, be able to travel, be able to play sports, be able to be in North Carolina in college, not next to my mom because I might have to go to the hospital at any second. So really should advocate for more people to donate their bone marrow to be able to be a cure to someone else and to be able to let someone else with sickle cell disease live a better life, because as you can see, it's definitely possible, but we need more donors out there to be able to do that for us. So now I am a senior at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and I study sign language interpreting at UNCG. And then after I graduate, I will be a sign language interpreter, and I plan on living here, probably in the Charlotte area, and interpreting. Some of the other things I do is I was a peer academic leader at my time here at UNCG, which helps first year students transition from high school to college. I also was an officer for 2 years for the Deaf Hearing College Connection Club, which connects the deaf community to college students so we could practice ASL and have fun events. And I'm a member of Sigma Alpha Lambda Honor Society. But again, none of this would have been possible without the transplant. And I would honestly, without this transplant, I would probably be at home, not being able to go to college, at least not far away, because, anything could happen with sickle cell. So we should really advocate for more people to donate their bone marrow so more people can have transplants, because anything is possible with that transplant, and we could definitely give new life to other people with sickle cell disease. Thank you so much for having me today. And yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. Send me a message. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for